This is my drone I built to plant trees, but not in any normal way, because when I take cover and flick this switch, it plants the trees with a missile. 4 years ago, Mark Rober also made a drone that plants trees, but in his video, he forgot to edit out one critical mistake. In this frame, if you zoom in very closely, you can see it's cringe. Sure, this drone may be effective, but it's not fun or interesting. So today I'm going to attempt to beat Mark Rober by making a drone that is 1, more effective than his, and 2, more fun. But to understand what led me to using these extremely dangerous rocket motors, we have to go back to my last video where I cut down a tree, and afterwards I wanted to plant a tree to make things even. Now I could just go outside and plant one, but that involves going outside. So instead I came up with an elaborate plan to make a drone that would plant one for me. Luckily I've already got this drone, so really I just need to find a way to attach something to the drone and then have it fall off at some point when I want it to. Yeah, that's my whole plan. Actually, you know how when you're in like primary school, you used to be able to like get a big bit of toilet paper and then you could just get it wet, and then it'd just like stick to things. Surely we can just do that, but it's like on the drone. Okay, that actually worked really well, apart from the fact that it didn't. You see, I cut out a good 5 minutes of me shaking the drone around trying to get it to fall off where I wanted it to. And also when eventually it did fall, it just ended up sitting in the grass. It's too light, there's not enough power. So since this design is not effective and also not fun, I need to find something that's going to be more rocket motors. Yeah, I thought I'd just save us both some time with me trying to justify why I'm using rocket motors. It's a rocket motor, okay? It's cool. I'm going to use it because it's a rocket motor. And obviously I'm not going to use a full-size liquid fuel rocket motor because I'm too dumb for that. And so instead I've got this nice and easy solid model rocket motor. And if I can just strap a tree to that and fire it into the ground, it should be pretty firmly planted. But to launch the rocket whilst it's way up in the air on the drone, we need some way of lighting the rocket wirelessly. In 3, 2, 1. Jesus Christ. Oh, that scared the shit out of me. And that worked out perfectly, but I wasn't finished yet, because next I needed to make sure that my drone could actually carry all of this stuff. But before we get to that, let me explain how I'm igniting the rocket while standing 10 meters away from the extremely dangerous rocket exhaust. I already have a remote control from a model plane, so we can just use an Arduino to decode the output from the receiver. But unfortunately, when the Arduino gets the launch signal, it can't supply enough power itself to light the flammable coating on the end of the igniter. So instead we'll get it to turn on a relay, which really just closes a switch, allowing all the energy from a separate battery to heat up the wire, igniting the rocket motor. And whilst I was testing this setup earlier on, I turned everything on and plugged in the igniter, but crucially forgot to turn on my brain, and just held the igniter wires in my bare hand, which meant I ended up with some lovely second-degree electrical burns. And that's actually the reason you can see me holding an ice pack for a lot of my last video. That wouldn't be the last of my close calls getting burnt on this project, but for now I still had to make sure the drone could carry all of this weight, since it wasn't designed to carry anything, let alone a sapling, rocket motor, and all of these messy electronics. So I had this whole really fancy 3D printed box thing for all the electronics, but I was thinking, why not just use a can? It's lightweight, much more than the 3D printed box. It's metal, so it's not going to melt if it gets too hot, unlike the plastic will, and I'm lazy. Let's go! Luckily the drone was okay, but there was a problem. When it was in the air, it was constantly moving up, even when I wasn't touching the controls. And I think this happened because it thought the weight it was carrying was a strong wind pushing it down, so it overcompensated by flying up. And to make matters worse, I hadn't even attached the sapling or rocket yet, which means it was only going to get heavier from here. So I went back home to try and brainstorm ways I could reduce the weight. Okay, I want you to have a read of this, and then that's all you're eating. Okay? But that didn't work out, and neither did the drone. Oi! Give me that. What are you doing? Unbelievable, mate. Get it together. But in all seriousness, I was at a loss for what to do. I needed the beer can to block the heat from the rocket, otherwise it would just melt straight through the drone. And I had to keep all the electronics, otherwise it wouldn't work. On top of the fact, I didn't know how the damaged propeller blade would impact the drone's performance. But, and I can't believe I get to say this, but thanks to all of your guys' support, when my friends over at PCBWay reached out offering to sponsor today's video, I gratefully accepted knowing that their PCB manufacturing services will be the solution to the ever-increasing weight of the drone. And if you didn't know, PCBWay also offers 3D printing, CNC machining, injection molding, and sheet metal folding. But to reduce the weight from all of this down to this, I ordered their PCB assembly service, which by the way was super easy to use. All I had to do was put in the basic details of the PCB, select turnkey, meaning they supply and solder all of the parts for me, then upload my files and wait for it to be shipped to my front door. And if you want to check them out, there's a link down in the description. Thanks again for PCBWay for sponsoring this video. I also bought another drone, and this one should be bigger and stronger than my current one. Okay, this one looks a little smaller than the photos, but surely it can still carry some weight. Nope, no, it's just it's a rip-off. It can't even carry two 9-volt batteries. It's useless. But at least the PCB was much better. That actually looks pretty professional. They also gave me some of these unfinished boards which don't have any parts on them. So if any of you guys want them, I'll give them out to someone who follows my Twitter. They are completely useless though. There's no point. I just want more followers. So... But the only thing left to do now was make the tree missile itself, and I wanted to use things that could decompose when they were fired into the ground. So I got this mysteriously empty toilet paper roll and glued the top into a cone shape, and then put a small olive sapling in and carefully packed the rocket motor into the center with some clayey soil to hold it in place. I also cut down the beer can from before and just used the bottom as a heat shield. Then I could poke the igniter through some holes, which meant it would hold onto the tree missile until it fired, which would blow the plug out, releasing it from the drone. And once I was happy with the heat shield, I taped it alongside the PCB, receiver, and batteries to the drone. But this was all a really complex design that I hadn't tested out at all, so it would be incredibly stupid just to go out and assume it would work first try. Okay, we're ready. 1, 2, 3. That was anticlimactic. Fuck yeah, now. It went off. And it did work first try, after a couple of seconds. But you can see that it was swinging a lot in the wind, which meant when it did eventually take off, it went way off into the bush. And I looked around for ages, but I eventually gave up trying to find it. So I went home and added some fins onto the missile to try and keep it flying straight, and then I painted them red for some extra speed. At this point I was feeling pretty confident, seeing as it worked out the first time, so I went back out, loaded the missile onto this little skewer I mounted on the drone for even more stability, then launched the drone, ran for cover, and... 3, 2, 1. Nothing. Nothing happened. And the worst part was, I had no idea why. So I just tried again. Load the tree missile, then launch the drone, then run for cover, and... 1, 2, 3, go. Nothing. Load the tree missile, launch the drone, run for cover, and go. Still nothing. And by now I was getting really annoyed. I'd literally changed nothing from the first time, and yet it didn't work. And the only thing I thought that may have happened was that maybe the rocket motors had gotten a little damp from sitting in the soil too long. So I went out, bought some new motors, replaced the old ones, and... Jesus. Let me give you some extra context about what just happened. that exhaust coming out of the motor is around 1200 degrees Celsius. And just by chance, my hand was close enough to the rocket to grab it and divert that away from my face. What the fuck? And I was confused at why it even happened because the switch isn't even on. How did that go off? It turns out an igniter wire had shorted to the battery, meaning it bypassed the whole PCB and just started heating the wires as soon as I plugged it in, until eventually it was hot enough to ignite. But believe it or not, that is still not the last of my dangerous close calls on this project. Either way, one slightly shaky but quick fix later, we were good to go again. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Look. Oh my god. Look at how deep it's... Jesus. Look at that. Bit singed. Look, it's all coming apart. That went pretty much perfectly. It was solidly planted into the ground, and with enough time, the cardboard shell would decompose, allowing the sapling to grow, which checks off the effectiveness box, and, as you can tell by my reaction, it easily checks off the fun requirement. But wanting more, and perhaps ignoring all of the close calls I had had along the way, I decided to push my luck and see if I could get an even better one. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Jesus. Fucking hell. And I think sometimes knowing when to stop is a valuable skill which I definitely don't have. But since you reached the end of this video, you should check out this other one.